Well, here's a couple of new old radio projects for me to start looking at, and these were donated to me by my good friend Al, who a few years back gave me a couple other radios that I've already restored and been using for a few years. And I don't know if he's cleaning out his basement or what, but here's a couple more that he gave to me. This first one, neither one of these I can't really find a name on them, so I'm not sure who they're from. The only thing that this says is right down here, it says Troubador, it looks like. It's kind of hard to see, just a small little decal. But, you know, it's broadcast AM, and it looks like it also has a shortwave band there also. Let's take a quick look at the back of this one. This one I have not really dug into either one of these yet, but this seems to be I don't see a transformer in there anywhere, so it looks like it might be just a you know, a series string set. And this, you see that this power cord is just kind of crumbling in my fingers, so that's definitely going to need to be replaced before we go any further on that. And it's got a little label here. I can't really read easily, but it doesn't really say too much other than RCA on it, so I'm not sure if it's an RCA unit or it's just referencing some RCA patents. So, radio number one. Okay, number two, it's got the broadcast AM band with the wavelength and meters listed too on the dial, and both of these look like they're in pretty decent shape. This one's especially, this one here has got some, you know, this is a little loose here on this side. I'll have to re-glue that and do some refinishing on it. This guy here, power cord is actually pretty supple yet, so we won't have to do too much to that. And it does have a transformer, so it's a transformer set, and it seems to have 5 tubes, pretty standard for a all-American 5. It does have an 80 rectifier tube, so it looks pretty early. These are all octal tubes on both of these. So, and this one has no name at all that I've seen anywhere. So I'm figuring both of them are probably from the 40s. But I guess I'm going to have to dig into them and figure out who actually made them and see if I can find a schematic for them. Well, after doing some Google research, I figured out at least one of these radios, what type it is. This one here, there's nothing on the front that tells what type of radio it is. But I was looking in the back and noticed over here it said cabinet by Stromberg Carlson. So it's got the tube layout there. So I started doing some Google image searching on Stromberg Carlson and found a picture that revealed a part number. And it turns out that this thing is a Model 320H from 1938. So I've got the schematic here, so I can go ahead and start taking a look at that, figuring out what it needs. Now this other one's still a mystery. The only thing that's on it is on the case. There's a little thing that says Troubador right down there. But that's the only name I have seen. Nothing on the chassis or inside the cabinet. It is, what, a 7-tube? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-tube set. It's a transformerless serial string set. It does have 2 output tubes here, so it's a push-pull pair. So it probably has some good volume to it if we can get it working. But unknown yet what type that is. It does have this cool feature here. I like this. Kind of like a little push button, like an AM radio from the 50s out of your car. You push that, these little buttons, and it goes to your presets. But that's it so far, so I'll keep looking, see if I can figure out what that one is. But at least we know we have a Stromberg Carlson from 1938. Now, normally I don't fire up these old radios without going through and checking everything and replacing all the capacitors, but I've seen other people do it, and I might give it a try. I'll hook it up on the variac and the dim bulb tester to make sure it's safe and not drawing a lot of power. This one does have that power cord here that was real crusty that needs to be replaced first. It goes just right on in there. And there's a capacitor right there, 0.05 microfarad. It's across the line, so you know, the so-called death capacitor. I'm going to go ahead, in case that guy shorts out, I'm going to go ahead and pull it out and replace it with a modern Y2 safety cap before I try applying a power to it. And this is also the radio. All it says is Troubador on it, and I have no idea what the manufacturer is. So let's put, got a new power cord for it. I'll go ahead and put one of these ones that has the wide and narrow spades on it, so hopefully we'll keep the chassis from being too hot. I'll hook it up so that the neutral is the side that connects to the chassis. Okay, got the new power cord hooked up with a safety cap across the line, going into the dim bulb tester, and that's coming from the variac, which is coming from the isolation transformer. So hopefully we're safe with all this hooked up. Let's get it started. That's on low voltage. That's flipped on, and video is on. So let's slowly bring this up. Bring up the variac until we start getting something on the meter here. There we go, it's coming to life. It's got 40 volts. And we got a little bit of glowing of the lamp there. I've already tested all these tubes and they all tested good, so looks like they're starting to glow just a little. Let's see current wise what we're doing. Okay, I'm drawing 7 watts. Okay, let's go ahead and bring it up. Higher voltage, 50. We're up to 60 volts. Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit of glow in the bulb. It's getting a little brighter. No sound yet. Turned up all the way. Let's see. What are we getting for 14 watts. Let's bring it up to, we'll say 80 volts maybe. Okay, we're getting even a brighter glow on that 60 watt bulb. That may be limiting our voltage. Okay. like we're getting some, yeah, definitely getting some hum from the speaker. Not hearing any radio stations yet. Okay, just a quarter of an amp, 20 watts. Okay, I'm able to get about 100 out of that with the dim bulb tester. Still getting a nice glow on the lamp. All the tubes are lighting up. At least the ones that are glass that I can see. And still getting a good hum out of the speaker. Nothing really coming in on the dial though. Oh, wait a minute. Put something there. Got nothing yet but hum. But at least it seems to be nothing major. It seems to be drawing a little bit higher current maybe than it should. Well, 0.3 amps. It's not bad. 28 watts. Okay, let me bring it up without the dim bulb tester and see if I can get the voltage up to the right amount. Okay, there we're up to about 107 volts going into the radio. A brighter glow on the dial light. It's very distorted, but actual radio signal coming through. And a good amount of buzz from sure those filter caps are dead. So looks like it'll be working once we get a few capacitors changed. That's what we're gonna do next. Yeah, I got the radio, mystery radio, I guess I'll call it. I don't know what brand it is. Mostly recapped. Here's a, replaced the electrolytics here. That was a 2-section. I don't know if that was original or not. I don't think it was because it looked like it was kind of hacked in there solder wise. But I got that one there and this one down here to replace that, and the rest of the capacitors are mostly redone. Here's an interesting one. That was a capacitor that I just left there. I clipped off the leads because it looks like there's a wire that you know, wraps around it and then goes down to another section down there. It looks like they made kind of an inductor and just used the capacitor as the form. So I decided to leave it there just in case it is acting as a form for that little inductor. But here's the capacitor that replaced it. And now one thing I wanted to point out is these little buttons here that tune the radio. You can see how they work. They're like little bands that kind of just stretch, and or not stretch, but you know, force the this axle around, which tunes, you know, the tuning capacitor. Now what I've noticed is there seems to be no way to adjust those. So I think these were just set on popular radio stations back in the day when this was made, and it was like your presets but not adjustable presets. So of course they don't go anywhere today, but Interesting technology. Still working after, I don't know, at least 70 years. This thing was probably made in the late 30s. So let's go ahead. It does work a lot better than it did before. Quite a glow there on the dim bulb tester. So I still have these capacitors to replace. I think these are probably a lot of the coupling capacitors for the amplifier tubes, which are right down there, so I should get them replaced here before I play this thing too long. I'm sure it's passing DC through them. But I was playing this earlier and it does seem to work. Now, of course I detuned it here, so let's see if I can pick up anything. Still warming up. Get a little buzz. There we go. Okay. This is one of my Chinese stations.
Yeah, right. Not one with him, but something to think about. All right, up next, Jade Rudin yesterday again made mention of not one but.
So it seems to be working pretty well. Getting some good. I don't have a lot of good, strong AM radio stations here, so this is pretty typical.
You're limiting your efforts, but if you go and help somebody else, I'll reduce the consequences to you. I won't give you as long as.
But yeah, it's working.
The judge.
So I'll go ahead and replace the rest of those, and it should be ready to go. Well, let me just do a little thing here on these capacitors that I'm replacing. In case you're new to radio restorations, these are the ones you want to get rid of. These are actually made out of paper. They're real popular on radios and all electronics back in the 30s, 40s, 50s even. And they're basically a paper insulator, I guess, with a wax coating to kind of hold them all together and seal them up. What happens with these things is they get real leaky. Their resistance increases and they become just big resistors rather than capacitors, and they start heating up. A lot of times you'll see these things are just all bubbled up because the resistance value got so high that they started getting real hot and the wax actually starts melting. So these are the guys you want to get rid of. Even though they may be working, eventually they're going to fail. Now here's the electrolytic capacitor in there that I think maybe had been replaced before, but it's, you know, the dual section 220 microfarad capacitors in there, but you can see at the top of this it's actually started to leak. See right here, that's some of the electrolyte kind of leaking out of the thing, so it was definitely bad too. So that's why I put these two modern electrolytics, and I have been using these little orange dip or orange drop, whatever they're called, capacitors. They're kind of a modern plastic capacitor, and I work on mostly pre-World War II radios. So I ordered what they call a pre-war kit, which is, you know, bags of capacitors that are different values. And the main reason they're called pre-war is because the values kind of changed after the war. You can see how these are like, you know, 0.05 microfarad. Now today that would be a 0.047, or the 0.03s would be a 0.033. So the way that they kind of measured the values changed. So if you're doing pre-war radios, you get this kit. If you're doing post-war radios, then you get the other kit, which has the more modern values and designations. So, and then you see we got some some old paper guys here yet. Some of these are going to be hard to get to, so I got to dig down there and replace them. Now the resistors, these old carbon composition resistors, they have a tendency to increase resistance when they get some age on them. So you always want to measure those too and see if they're within tolerance. So this has no band on it, so that's like a 20% tolerance. And I did that with all these, and they're all within tolerance. So I didn't have to replace any resistors. And then these little capacitors, these are capacitors here too. But I believe these flat ones, for the most part, are kind of a ceramic capacitor, which doesn't go bad like the the wax paper type. So I generally don't replace those, and have had good luck with leaving them be. Okay, so the unknown radio, the mystery radio, is completely recapped, including those difficult ones to get down there. There's a little of a cluster of capacitors in that area that were buried pretty deep. But it's all done. And problem I'm having now is a very dirty tuning capacitor. Clicks in and out. Show you some here.
Foreign language or English teacher. Where I'm sure some people
Lots of popping while tuning, so I'm going to have to
Chinese
get down there and figure out how to clean that tuning capacitor out. I think that's where I'm picking it up. But
people who are from a native speaking
sounding good.
For convenience sake, or for
the local
regulation's sake,
Chinese
you've gotta have
propaganda
something, you've gotta have a
station.
standard. And the
There's
situation
the
is that currently we do
tone switch,
only require,
just switches in different
native
capacitors.
speakers coming from a select number of countries to work in the business, and that's the law of the land. And when you roam, you do as Romans do. You
That
gotta
works well.
abide by the law of the land.
Plays real loud.
And as to
It does have that push-pull pair, AB, Class AB rather than just Class A, just more typical in these type of radios. So
those
plenty of volume.
and club cities, perhaps
So
parents are better educated.
anyway,
to
get
know
that tuning capacitor cleaned up. This will be a nice sounding radio.
smaller cities, like my hometown, my uncle.
Alright, I cleaned up the tuning capacitor here with a little brake cleaner. I just sprayed it down in between the veins, and that cleaned it up quite a bit, at least on this end here. See, I'm tuning it and not getting that popping that I was getting before. Because there's very few AM radio stations here in the DC area, so that's the main one I get is the Chinese station.
In the 40s, say Brazil,
I also have my own radio station right there. It's right over here. I put one of these in just because, just for testing old radios. And I've just got Pandora playing to it. So that's the best one. Well, you see though, tuning through here is pretty quiet. Down here it's still a little noisy. Got some few pops, but it seems to be getting better as I, move those that tuning capacitor in and out of radio stations. It's improving. So I think that's pretty much it for the electrical restoration. I've got the box over here, the chassis gluing together. This side over here was kind of loose, so I put some tight bond wood glue on it and glued it back together. It's clamped up. Tomorrow morning I'll take the clamps off and maybe reinstall the radio. Should be good to go. Here's the radio back in its case. Playing well. Looking pretty good. I'm not going to restore the case because it's in original condition. It looks pretty nice. Plus, if I restored it, it would probably erase that Troubador name, which is the only thing really that remains of the identification of this. It's still a mystery radio, so if anybody watching this recognizes this thing, please let me know what it is. Until then, I'll just call it the mystery radio.